Question 2.4, deductive reasoning. So here's our main ideas. Vocab. So deductive reasoning uses facts, rules, definitions, or properties to reach a logical conclusion. So inductive reasoning, you're given examples and of things that happen, and you come up with a conclusion based off that. Deductive reasoning, you are given facts, things that you know are true, and you come up with a conclusion based off of that. So you have two laws. The first is the law of detachment, which says that if P then Q is true, and P is true, then Q is true. So what that means is, so if you know an if then is true, and you are then told that the hypothesis is true, then you know that this is true. So if an animal is a fish, then it can swim. Steve is a fish. The conclusion would be, then he can swim. The law of syllogism says if you have two if-thens, so if P then Q, and if Q then R is true, then P then R is also true. So if it is Saturday and then you do not have school. If you do not have school, then you can sleep in. If it is Saturday, then you can sleep in. So one flows into the next. An example of syllogism. Okay. So example 1 here, the statement below is true. So if a ray is an angle bisector, then it divides the angle into two congruent rays. Determine whether each conclusion is valid based on the given information. So you're given that ray BD bisects angle ABC. Angle ABD is congruent to angle CBD. So let's draw a little picture real quick. So here's angle ABC, and it tells you that ray BD is the bisector. So if a ray is the angle bisector, then it divides the angle into two congruent rays. And it tells you ray BD is a bisector. The conclusion ABD is congruent to CBD. This is a valid conclusion because if it's a bisector, it divides into two congruent rays. So there's the if-then. You are given the if, the ray is a bisector. The conclusion is the then part of it. So that's a valid statement. So for the law of syllogism, so these flow into each other. So you have two examples here. So if the symbol of a substance is lead, or is Pb, then it is lead. If a substance is lead, then its atomic number is 82. So in this case, this is, you can reach a valid conclusion. Because the if goes into this then, which then becomes the next if, which leads into another then. So the conclusion would be, if the symbol of a substance is Pb, then its atomic number is 82. So you can kind of ignore the second then and the first then and the second if because they match up. It is lead, it is lead. So here, water can be represented by H2O. So think about it as an if-then. If a substance is water, then it can be represented by H2O. Hydrogen and oxygen are in the atmosphere. If a substance is hydrogen and oxygen, then it is in the atmosphere. Well, these don't go together because this doesn't talk anything about water, H2O. So there are no valid conclusions you can draw from that. So that would be invalid. Alright, now the final example, determine whether the statement 3 follows from statements 1 and 2 by the law of detachment or the law of syllogism. If it does, state which law was used. If it does not, write invalid. So vertical angles are congruent. So if two angles are vertical, then they are congruent. If two angles are congruent, then their measures are congruent. So if two angles are vertical, then their measures. There's a typo. That guy should say equal. So if two angles are congruent, then their measures are equal. So if two angles are vertical, then their measures are equal. So this is an example of syllogism. Because you can write this. Ignore that guy. If two angles are vertical, then they are congruent. And then if two angles are congruent, their measures are equal. So you have to rewrite this as an if-then. So if goes to then, and then this then becomes that if. And then so if this if is true, then that conclusion is true. Their measures are equal. So that's why this is an example of syllogism.